Hey, I just finished that book I picked up. Yeah, the one I picked up yesterday. It is so much better than I could have imagined. I really wasn't expecting it. Um, can I read you the first chapter? Because I really want you to read this. I know you said it might not be your thing, but I mean, it's not too long. What is it, like 250 pages? It's fun. It's really cute. Can I read it to you? Okay. Come snuggle up on my lap or something. Right. I don't know how long the first chapter is. It's not crazy long. It's like 14 pages. Right. Elise had never really had normal relationships. Well, she had, but something always went a bit wrong with them. There was the guy she dated when she was 14 who was oddly obsessed with a game from his childhood, which in any usual case she wouldn't have had a problem with, though she caught him whispering phrases like, you like that, don't you, dirty girl, to his handheld device while playing it on the bus to school. Needless to say, that relationship had ended the same day, and when being honest with himself, Elise didn't think he cared that much about it. Then there was her relationship at 16 with a guy in high school. Living in the United States, she'd been able to get a driver's license shortly after turning 16 and had taken him on what she'd thought would be a regular cute date. They'd gone to see a movie, he treated her to the fanciest food which he could afford, fast food, and they'd snuggled up on the back seat of a second-hand, slightly beaten hatchback, listening to their favourite album. Tom, that was his name, had gotten slightly adventurous, and instead of just holding her hand, he'd let go for the briefest of instances to touch her thigh. The little finger on his right hand had then started to explore a bit further, and Elise, having been completely smitten with the guy, had blushed profusely, but hadn't spotted his hand away. Let's just say that exploring turned into much more, and though it was on the back seat of a cramped car, Elise had loved every second of it. When they were finished, Tom had pulled out his phone and asked if they could take a cute selfie to commemorate the first time for both of them, to which Elise, thinking that it was the cutest idea in the world, agreed. She was convinced that they were in love until she turned up to school the next day to find countless printouts of that photo taped to wall after wall, locker after locker, desk after desk, each of them featuring a short sentence added on a computer. Elise Draper is a slut. Childish? Yes. Offensive? Yes. World-shattering? Most definitely. Despite the school's best efforts, which included the teachers threatening anyone caught putting those pictures up with a permanent exclusion, and an assembly meant to address safe sex, the dangers of underage sex, and the effects of bullying, everyone had started looking at Elise differently. Guys would constantly come up to her, either to make some rude remark or to, in the most disgusting ways possible, ask her for favours. Needless to say, though it was selfish and cruel, Elise had been overjoyed when another girl in her grade and her chemistry teacher had been caught sleeping together, and suddenly, Elise sleeping with a guy her own age on the first date seemed to be forgotten. Then college had come around, and in her second year, just after she turned 20, an absolutely gorgeous guy from Madrid had been living with living with her best guy friend. A couple of beers later, and a best friend leaving for a party, and Elise had been riding Mr. Luscious with pure elation. Great, right? Well, not when it turned out that Mr. Luscious was the son of her new Spanish professor for the year, a man who, while not normally racist, was racist when it came to the girls whom his son dated, and Mr. Luscious couldn't date an American girl, no. So, even though it must have broken thousands of university rules, that professor had done everything in his power to stand in the way of Elise and a passing grade. She'd only managed to scrape a B by insisting to the woman in charge of the entire university that a final assignment was most certainly not worth an E, considering she'd used the Spanish language in a far more sophisticated way than some of her friends who'd managed to achieve an A. Though the reassessment of her assignment had resulted in her getting a phenomenal mark, the coursework and grades for the rest of the year, which had already been struck down and finalised by the racist professor, had held her final grade back quite a bit. And finally, there was Evan, a cute cashier in a shop which he frequented after moving to Lansing, Michigan, to get a job translating a magazine into Spanish. After visiting that shop for about a month, and somehow always ending up being served by Evan, barring maybe 2 occasions, he'd finally plucked up the courage to ask for a number. They went on 2 dates, both went well, and at the end of the second date, he'd taken her back to his apartment. Ameise had been expecting a few beers, maybe a couple of glasses of wine, some fun conversation, smooth moves, and then a dull ache in her vagina the next day. What had actually happened, however, was they walked into the apartment and Ameise had screamed in pure terror at the sight of not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 rattlesnakes just slithering about. Something which Evan had unfathomably forgotten to mention was that he earned extra money on the side as a snake breeder, and though he didn't just let the snakes roam his apartment on a normal day, and they were only out of their plastic enclosure because it had somehow fallen off the side table, Ameise couldn't picture herself living among snakes for the rest of her life. She couldn't even picture herself living among a single snake for 2 minutes, even for a bit of quick, slightly panicked sex, so she had apologised profusely to Evan, had turned around, and had run away. Then, of course, she bought groceries at a different store from that moment on. So when Elise's roommate, Lara, had hooked her up with a date with a cute guy called Oliver, Ameise hadn't been very hopeful. "I promise he's great," Lara insisted. "If I wasn't gay, I'd be all over him, trust me." But Ameise didn't really know what to say, which was clear to Lara, who thrust her phone in Elise's face. "Look at him," Lara insisted. "Don't you think he's cute?" Ameise did think he was cute, and that was part of the problem. He had short, naturally messy-looking, tufty brown hair, piercing green eyes, a slightly large nose, though instead of looking awkward on him, it actually framed his face really well, and an incredibly chiseled jawline. He was no Mr. Luscious, but he was certainly something. Maybe it was the chain necklace, or the silver ring adorning his right index finger, or the little black earrings he had on, which looked like little pins pushed into his earlobes, but he looked comfortable, confident, and maybe a little dangerous. And Ameise found all of that sexy. He wasn't overly tall, maybe a bit under 6 feet tall, which was the perfect height for her being 5'8". After all, who didn't like having their chin lifted up before being pulled into a kiss, especially with a guy as cute as this? He is cute, but you know what my relationships are like, Ameise mumbled. Lara rolled her eyes. "Come on, he's going to be here tonight. He comes from a rich background, so fancy dinner, probably fancy car. And maybe a king-size bed to snuggle up on," she suggested cheekily, grinning. Ameise was the one to roll her eyes this time. "I'm not into that stuff. You know, I'd rather live in a cramped New York apartment my whole life if I get to live with Mr. Perfect. I don't care about a trust fund, baby." "Ugh, Ameise, stop making this difficult. Just go on the damn date, suck some dick, and come back tomorrow morning, walking like you've got a stick up your ass, okay?" Ameise sighed. Lara clearly wasn't going to let this go. "I told him all about my cute blonde roommate with perky tits who can't catch a break with guys, and he was so interested. Don't make me lose an important client because you're too scared to go out to dinner," Lara whined, maybe playfully, maybe seriously. While her hairdressing business wasn't necessarily in danger of failure, she couldn't afford to lose a regular like Oliver. Ameise sighed again, defeated. "Fine," she droned. "But if I go back to his place and he tries to get me to have a threesome with his brother or father or something like my luck would suggest, you're doing the dishes for a month." Lara breathed a sigh of relief. "Good," she said. "He's an only child and an orphan. No chances of that." 4 hours later, and Ameise had managed to work herself into a bit of a state. She'd inexplicably gone from, "I don't really care, it probably won't work out," to, "But what if it does work out? What if I screw it up? Is this dress tight enough? Is it too tight?" She took a final look at herself in the mirror. She was wearing a lovely deep navy blue shoulder-strap dress which, while being simple, complemented her blonde hair and hooked the curves of her body just right. A red lipstick stood out sharply against her paler skin, and the fake, of course, gold hoop earrings added a bit of charm to her appearance. Was this too much for a first date? Maybe. That was the problem. She didn't know. Lara had rushed in while Ameise had been in the bath, shaving her legs after having suddenly thought, "Wait, is sex on the table? Will he see my legs?" to tell her that he was going to arrive at 8, but he hadn't said where they were going. Ameise would kick herself if they were going to do the classic movie and quick meal in a restaurant when she clammed herself up as if she was going to dine in Buckingham Palace, but at least that was better than turning up to the fanciest restaurant in all of Lansing wearing her best hoodie and black tights. Though she did look good in tights, even though her butt was certainly not her best feature. Squinting at her reflection and baring her teeth in a very unattractive manner, which she would be ashamed for anyone else to see, just to check for possible bits of food or overabundant plaque, She took a step back, sighed, and swung her arms together gently, clapping softly when they connected, only for them to swing away and come back again. She was never usually this nervous for dates. Maybe it was the spontaneity, or the fact that she'd never met him, or the fact that he was rich, according to Lara, rich, which made her feel a bit out of her depth. Then came the knock at the door, and Ameise nearly twisted her foot as she bolted to the door in her high heels. Of course, Lara made it there first, and hid out of sight, giving Ameise a thumbs up and a goofy grin to encourage her. Ameise opened the door. There, leaning against the wall in a perfectly tailored black suit, complete with a navy blue tie, which made Ameise scream on the inside as they were coincidentally matching colours, was a much cuter than she'd expected Oliver Durant. The stubble on his chin and cheeks and a small vertical scar beneath his right eye, which Ameise hadn't been able to pick up on the image, made her heart catch in her throat. Oh no, this man was gorgeous. Maybe he would give Mr. Luscious a run for his money. And of course, he had to be goddamn British with a delicious deep voice. Ameise? Oliver asked. Ameise couldn't reply. Oliver glanced from side to side, then leaned in slightly, looking around the apartment, as if checking for Lara to confirm that he had the right place. You are Ameise, aren't you? Ameise whimpered. It just happened. She couldn't help it. Oliver grinned, like he knew that the slightly pathetic noise was a fantastic sign. Good. He looked her up and down slowly with those deep green eyes, and his smile only widened. You look absolutely stunning. Again, Elisa's breath got caught in her throat, and she managed a small sound which she didn't even know how to describe. Shall we go? We have a reservation at... Damn, I've forgotten the name. The break in the romance book-like charm gave Ameise the courage to speak. That's useful, she quipped, though she was surprised, or maybe she wasn't, to find that her voice was quiet and meek. Oliver chuckled. It is, isn't it? Anyway, I know the way, unless I lose that too. It's possible, he rambled, before his eyes locked on hers. After all, I can't stop thinking about how lucky I am to take a woman like you out. And just like that, Ameise could only squeak again. It was a very fancy Italian restaurant, the sort of restaurant where they take your jacket at the door, let you taste like... Sorry, I can't read. Let you taste 5 kinds of wine before ordering, where everything in the menu is written in cursive, where there's a live jazz band playing slow, romantic music in the corner, and where the waiters all have curly mustaches. So Ameise was happy that she'd dressed accordingly, though she still somehow felt underdressed. Oliver sat across from her, though the tables were wide but shallow, so he was only a few feet away. He reached a hand out and took hers, both of which had been resting on the table. They'd not long ordered, and though they'd only had the walk to the car, the short car ride and the walk into the restaurant, Ameise somehow felt like they were connecting exceptionally quickly. He'd cracked a joke about something in the car, which had eased Elise's nerves slightly, though she hadn't heard a word of the joke, as she'd been too preoccupied with staring at how his right hand had gripped the steering wheel, and how he'd been resting his left arm on the wound-down window in his door. The veins on his hands, the delicateness of his fingers, the fact that Ameise had wanted to suck on them, made her wonder if what people had said about her in high school actually had some merit. When I was talking to Lara about looking for a date, I have to admit, I had no idea that you would be this incredible. Drop-dead gorgeous, a real treat for the eyes, but also for the mind. Just looking at you, Ameise, I have so many questions, Oliver said, his deep voice mingling with the plucks of the bass from the jazz band, and sending a shiver down Elise's spine. For the mind? Ameise questioned, trying her best to get a grip of herself. I haven't said much. I know, and that's what's interesting me, Oliver replied. He leaned in, and his grip on her hand tightened. You see, most women I take out seem to blab on and on about things, a true case of verbal, well, you know. And that's not something I hold against them, and trust me, I've had plenty of fantastic dates with them, sending jokes and jabs back and forth all night. And when I place my hand on their cheek and they drop completely silent, trust me, it's a magical moment. But it's always the quieter women who interest me. There's an inherent sense of mystery there, always questions which I want to find the answers for, and digging for those answers is always a joy, he chuckled. Ameise grimaced slightly. You sound like you go on a lot of dates. I do, Oliver replied, almost too enthusiastically. Though maybe not for the reasons you think. Actually, I would be willing to bet that you couldn't guess the reason with 10 tries. Ameise raised her eyebrows. Oh yeah? What do I get if I win? A waiter arrived with the wine which Oliver had ordered, and gently filled both of their glasses. Oliver raised his once it was filled, and Ameise mimicked him as the waiter walked away. A bragging right, Oliver suggested. And a second date. If you're happy to, after finding out the reason, of course. Elise grinned. Sure. They clinked glasses. I take it you're not looking for the one. I'm not. Or casual sex? No. The thrill of the date? No. Just to meet people? No. Find suitable partners for friends? I don't have friends. Elise paused at that sad statement, then couldn't help but wonder why someone wouldn't have friends, though she distracted herself with her guessing. Cult indoctrination. If that were the case, I wouldn't tell you, Oliver grinned. To give women the night of their lives. I don't have to try to do that, he winked. Finding friends with benefits. Again, no friends. Just to let off some steam. I have a home gym for that, Oliver replied, before taking a sip of his wine. Last guess. Elise sipped her own wine, trying not to get distracted by the incredible rich fruitiness of the flavour. She eventually shrugged, having no clue, and simply throwing out the first thing which came to mind, despite it being unlikely. To find more women for your harem? She asked jokingly. Oliver went quiet. Wow, he breathed. You actually got it. Elise choked mid-sip of her wine, and she thought that a couple of drops came out of her nose. Embarrassed and frantically trying to cover that up, she threw her hand up to her nose, though her fingers knocked the bottom of the wine glass, sending it from her hand, smashing into the table, and causing the gorgeous wine to splash on the dress. Oliver stared in disbelief. Other patrons looked around the room at the idiot who'd smashed something expensive. A waiter rushed over with a napkin, which Elise quickly snatched to dab at the deepening stain of her favourite dress, her cheeks reddening at a probably unhealthy speed. Oliver cracked up, but his laughter quickly died as Elise stood up with tears in her eyes, and in defeat, turned, running from the restaurant. Not to the bathroom to try to salvage the dress, she already knew it was ruined, but to the front door. Why couldn't she find someone fucking normal for once? She finally meets a cute, no not cute, devilishly handsome, smooth, bassy-voiced British guy, only for him to be the leader of some sort of sex club, and with himself at the centre. How egotistical, how self-satisfactory. She heard Oliver apologising to the waiter, as if she was the one in the wrong here. Sure, people could lead whatever lives they wanted, but it was hardly fair to charm a girl as much as he had, and only reveal, after the date had started, that, oh, by the way, he already has 9 girlfriends. The cheek of it. Bursting outside, thankful for the chilly air of the early evening to give her something else to feel, Elise ignored the looks of the other fancy, rich, harem-having, sex-party-leading, sex-dungeon-owning patrons as they entered the fanciest Italian restaurant in the city, and she slumped on the steps by the door. She didn't know what she felt. She knew that she was cursed, that much was clear. She was destined to have misogynistic, deluded, racist father-having, snake-breeding or polyamorous boyfriends and dates for the rest of her life, wasn't she? She didn't know if she wanted to laugh or cry. She only knew one thing for certain. Lara was going to have a fuck ton of dishes to do for the next month. So how'd you like it? I know, it's really good, isn't it? Here, read more if you like. And don't be surprised if you fly through it. Because I really wasn't expecting to, as quickly as I did. Just, don't blame me for it maybe ruining your life in the best way. Hey guys, I hope you liked the audio. As you might have guessed, this is actually one of my books that I've just read to you. It's called Devoured. There's a link to the product on screen now and just below the video. It is a really good book. It's a romance. If you like the first chapter, I think you're going to absolutely love it and you'd support me by reading. Thanks.